It is impossible to defeat Russia on the battlefield. It was they who started the war. We are not at war with the people of Ukraine, as I have said many times before. God forbid, they do not know what they are doing. Putin's keynote address to the Federal Assembly was supposed to take place late last year. But he only gave it now. The Kremlin and Russian propaganda called it long-awaited, almost epical and historic, but it did not bring any sensation or victorious declarations about the course of the war. For more than an hour and a half, the president once again recalled the infamous American White Labs allegedly in Ukraine, and boasted about the new state-of-the-art weapons, as well as the roads, schools and apartments that are about to appear in Russia. He told us that pedophilia was allegedly legalized in the West, but that Russia did not interfere in the private lives of its citizens. We have repeatedly debunked such statements from the Kremlin, so now we will look at just 5 of the most striking fakes. In February 22, everything was ready for another bloody and punitive action in the Donbass. They were the ones who started the war. And we used force and will use force to stop it. Putin has been repeating the fiction that Russia did not attack anyone throughout the war. In fact, in 2014 it was Russia that forcibly occupied and annexed Ukrainian Crimea, and then sent its soldiers and equipment into Donbass, creating separatist people's republics there. In 2022, it was also Russia that systematically and purposefully prepared for a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Kremlin and Putin personally deceived the international community until the last moment, and all evidence of preparations for an attack provided by intelligence agencies and journalists of other countries were called fakes in the information war. Russian agrarians harvested a record harvest. Look, 150 million tons of grain, including more than 100 million tons of wheat. Until 10 to 15 years ago, it was just a fairy tale, an unrealizable plan. Having seized the south of Ukraine, the fertile land of Zaporozhye and Kherson regions, Russia received millions of tons of grain stored in warehouses, and later was able to harvest another 6 million tons from the fields. According to Kiev, this explains the record harvest of 2022. For comparison, a year earlier Russia harvested only 76 million tons. The development of the cultural sphere will be one of the priorities for the revival of peaceful life in Donbass and Novorossiya. Hundreds of cultural institutions, including museum collections and buildings, will need to be restored, repaired and equipped. Things that enable people to feel that they belong to the unified cultural and historical educational space of centuries-old Great Russia. Putin constantly talks about abolishing everything Russian in the West. Now the Russian president cares about the cultural heritage in the invaded territories, calling them part of Great Russia. In fact, during the war, the Russian army systematically destroyed cultural sites and monuments in Ukraine and robbed museums. According to the Ukrainian prosecutor's office, only in Kherson the Russians stole more than 15,000 art objects and objects of historical heritage. In total, the Ukrainian authorities say, more than 30 museums in Kherson, Mariupol, Melitopol and other cities were looted or completely destroyed. Recently one of the brigades of the armed forces of Ukraine, shame on us, shame on them not, was given the name Edelweiss, like Hitler's divisions. One of the brigades of the AFU has indeed recently been named Edelweiss, but the fiction is different, in the exclusivity of this symbol and its direct connection with Nazism. In Russia itself, until recently, there was an Edelweiss detachment within the interior troops. The mountain flower is also used as a symbol in the military of Austria, France, Germany, Poland, Switzerland and other countries. The president's statements about the spirituality of the West did not go unnoticed. Putin again accused the U.S. and the strange EU of destroying traditional family values, even allegedly legalizing pedophilia there. And the Russian president cared, for example, about a gender-neutral God in the Anglican Church. The Anglican Church, for example, is known to be planning to consider the idea of a gender-neutral God. What do you think? I'm sorry, God. They don't know what they're doing. In fact, the Christian God has neither sex nor gender. This is what the Church of England's innovation underscores. It has chosen to use neutral pronouns. It is not about Jesus Christ, but specifically about his Father God. In many of the world religions of the past, it was customary to ascribe both masculine and feminine characteristics to the God of the present, and at times people combined these characteristics into one, thus emphasizing the difference between the Almighty and mortals. Putin did not make any statements about the course of the war in Ukraine or about the situation on the front, either fake or true, during his address. This in itself is revealing. Putin thanked the participants of the so-called SSR and all the Russian people who allegedly supported the special operation, but there was no mention of the civil consolidation that the president spoke of in his address. Despite Putin's assurance that civil rights are immutable in Russia and that the government does not interfere in people's lives, those Russians who oppose this war are being detained, fined, and imprisoned. Their numbers continue to grow.